In conjunction with Invest in Others, Advisorpedia, Redtail Technology, and Proudmouth, we present Empowering Others, a podcast series of stories from people within the financial services community who are working to make a difference in people's lives. Our hope is that you will listen, learn, and be inspired to find a way to use your gifts, whatever they may be, to help others.
Purpose. When you become successful, what's next is something that a lot of successful people really struggle with. You spend this lifetime thinking big and working hard to reach such great heights, but what's next? How do you turn that corner and find true impact that lives beyond? Welcome back. I'm Matt Ackermann, and I am honored today to be joined by my good friend, Aaron Klein from Riskalyze, to discuss redefining success. Aaron, welcome.
Hey, so excited to be with you, Matt.
You know, Aaron, from that first time I met you at a conference down in Miami, you've always just blown me away. Not just because of everything you were accomplishing on the fintech side, which is really impressive, but everything that you stand for. It's just amazing. And, thanks for joining us today. This podcast is a real labor of love and something where I really like to highlight some of the real good players here in the industry.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's an amazing industry, and yet it's one that I think points us to a lot of opportunity to give back. And so it's just a great topic. It's a super fun topic to talk about. And so thanks for having me on.
So I'm going to take you back a little bit. We're going to start kind of at the beginning. What made you want to start Riskalyze? What was kind of the need that you were filling at that time?
I had a conversation with a couple of friends for some time. It actually took about 2.5 years of conversations for a company to be born. And we were just having a lot of conversations about the concept of risk, how average investors thought about the concept of risk. And it was just really apparent to me that psychology just has this unique ability to sabotage how we invest. That when markets are going up, we're feeling excited and successful, and we want to put more risk on and put more money to work. And then whenever markets, inevitably fall back, we're feeling fearful and anxious, and we're wanting to take risk off and take money, put it on the sidelines. And, ultimately, if you step back and look at what we're doing with those, psychological impulses that we have, that we're deeply hardwired with, we're buying high and we're selling low, which is not exactly a recipe for success. And so, our belief at the very beginning, our thesis that we started out with was that if we could help financial advisors, who are so great at delivering behavioral coaching and guidance and help and support to their clients, if we could help them create a framework for their clients to react to risk appropriately, we could really transform that fearful investor who makes bad decisions into the fearless investor who makes great decisions. And ultimately, what financial advisors need to deliver those amazing financial outcomes are clients willing to make a series of great short-term decisions. And so that was kind of the idea behind the company from the very beginning. And that's that drive and desire to see investors be more successful, to empower the world to invest fearlessly, is really what got us started from the beginning.
Well, that success of Riskalyze, as we know it today, didn't happen, I know, overnight. Mm-hmm. What was kind of those beginning days like of Riskalyze? And was there ever a doubt in your mind that you were headed towards success?
Oh, yes. I mean, the first 2 years in particular were just filled with twists and turns. First of all, our core idea was right. Our strategy for getting there turned out to be very, very wrong. Like we spent the first year, just building out core technology. And then we had this theory where great financial advisors are not going to buy brand new risk technology to road test on their clients. And so we've got to validate this in some way. And then what we'll do is we'll earn the money from that validation, and we'll use that to build the financial advisor product we've always wanted to build. So our idea was launch this as a free website for, call it your $25,000 E-Trade guys. And then, try to license it to like an E-Trade or a Schwab or a TD Ameritrade or something like that. And then, that would bring in enough money. We'd turn around, we'd build the advisor product we wanted to build. So, a lot of that turned out to work out, right? Like we built the technology, we launched it as the free website. We got some great PR, New York Times, NPR, Barron's. Like we had people come on and build like $2 billion of portfolios on the risk technology, and they loved it. Like they're finding their risk number, they're punching in their what they own and like comparing that to the risk number of their portfolio, and they're loving that. And they're coming back and doing it multiple times. And so we're like, okay, we've really got something here. Then the whole, I call it our year of successful failure, because after all that success, we then completely failed at licensing it to anybody. Like we got really close with one of those firms, and then they like started asking us questions about the technology. And it turns out their tech was so antiquated that there was no way that like it could talk to our technology for like years into the future, while they rebuilt things. And so like that wasn't going to work. And so I remember we had like 3 months of money left in the bank, and I am flying home from this meeting where like the last possible deal has fallen apart. And somewhere I've still got the notebook where I wrote on the page the Apollo 13 question, right? Which is, what do we have on the ship that's good? And all I could really write was like great core technology and $2 billion worth of validation. And so, I kind of came home and said to the team, gosh, like if we're going to go down, let's go down swinging. Like, let's try to rebuild the product for financial advisors and see if we can't get them to buy the $2 billion of validation that we already did with the free website. And, turns out like we could have saved ourselves probably 6 to 9 months of just like me crisscrossing the country trying to get that deal, because when we rolled out the product for financial advisors, they quickly embraced it and saw the success for what it was. And just kind of started us on this hyper growth trajectory that we are still on today.
So you're at those early days, and success is probably defined differently than it is now.
Sure.
What was kind of that goalpost you were shooting for? Was it you got some great notoriety, you've got some attention now? What was the success you were reaching for in those early days?
Yeah, I mean, well, at the very basic level, it was like, well, gosh, let's at least prove that we can bring a few dollars into the door before the business goes bankrupt, so that investors might want to stand behind us and keep us going. And we that was, I would say, the original goal in those early days, the metric for success. You start a company with very, very lofty goals, and then it only takes a few twists and turns for you to quickly have like very, very basic goals. Like, let's just try and show some good traction so that we can stay alive and kind of live to fight another day. But, by, I would say, middle of 2013, we had financial advisors joining. We had a little bit of breathing room. We raised a little bit more money. Investors stood behind us. And we're really starting to think about like what success looks like for us. And the biggest thing that we were able to measure ourselves by was financial advisors who were joining, implementing the product, and then turning around and telling us that their clients were making better decisions in a more rational way. And for us, I do remember that moment where in, call it middle to late 2013, you kind of like picked your head up and you went, oh my gosh, like that original mission that we articulated as empowering the world to invest fearlessly, like we're actually starting to see the first glimmers of doing that. And today we've delivered, I want to say 5 million risk numbers advisors have delivered to their clients. It is scaling at a very rapid pace, the impact that the risk number and the fearless investing movement is making on the world. And so I don't know, I've always felt incredibly fortunate that I got to be a part of a company where success was not just measured. I mean, look, revenue, creating jobs, all those things are great things, but we got to measure success in terms of the impact that we were making on investors. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
Now you fast forward, and Riskalyze today is a movement. Everybody in the industry knows it, knows the brand, knows the name, knows you and everything you've done. But what inspired you along the way to begin to find new definitions when you thought of success and new avenues for what success meant?
Yeah, I was thinking as you were asking that question, it's hard for me to define how that looked along the way, because, to be honest, like I grew up with a lot of examples of people, first of all, being generous, and second of all, having a giving mentality and having an abundance mentality to give out of. I grew up with some really good examples for that. My dad was an entrepreneur, not a big scaling entrepreneur. Like, it was more of a local regional business that, it grew a lot, and it provided great jobs for his employees who loved working for him. I was one of them. I started working for him at the age of 12 in the afternoons after school, packing boxes, and when my voice got deep enough, answering the phone and taking orders. And so, they never put him on the cover of a magazine, but he taught me a ton about entrepreneurial business. But the thing that I saw was that even before my dad's business got into some really successful years, he was still somebody who chose to operate out of an abundance mentality and be a giver. And he was a consistent giver. Like, it would, to be perfectly candid, like, there were some years of poverty there. I still remember when he was working a job while also trying to get the business started. And then, basically they gave him an ultimatum that he had to move down to Southern California, kind of back into the rat race that he moved away from, or they were gonna end his job. And he said, no, I'm not moving my family back to LA, not going to do that. And so they, with very little notice, just let him go. And he went down and tried to get unemployment, and they denied him unemployment because he had a business license for a business that was, basically producing no revenue at the time, right? So, even through all of that, I never saw him lose his abundance mentality or his giving mentality. And that really, I think, was formative for me. Again, I probably didn't have a lot to give that year, right? But both my dad and mom just really had that mentality and shared that with others. And so I don't know that there was a point in time along the journey where I just said, oh, you got to find a different way to measure success and a different way to give back. Like, I can honestly say that thanks to particularly my dad, but my dad and mom, frankly, I've just been instilled with that giving mindset from the beginning.
So that impact mindset, that abundance mindset, that giving mindset. Like I said, I can remember that first conversation, and everybody else at a financial conference wants to tell you about their company, what they do, what makes them different. And you and I sat there, and you told me about the amazing things that you were excited about that were happening, that you're doing in Ethiopia and the work you're doing in Africa.
Okay.
And it was incredible to me because, like I said, you weren't sitting there selling a product. You were just so proud and so invigorated by the work you were doing there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, first of all, we kind of got to that work in an interesting way because, so my wife and I have adopted 3 times. Our first son was born in South Korea, amazing kid. He has just turned 15, and but he was 8 months old when he came home. And in Korea, adoption is driven for like cultural reasons. Sons of single mothers will struggle to get married in that culture because the father of the bride is kind of like, well, I don't know what family you come from, and that kind of thing. So it's a bit more of a cultural perspective. When we went to adopt again a couple of years later, Korea had ballooned up to like a 3-year wait. So we were like, oh, there's not as much need there. And our adoption agency had opened up a program in Ethiopia. So we applied there. And our daughter, Emma, came home at 8 months old. She is just turning 13. And in Ethiopia, adoption is driven by bone-crushing poverty. Like, by all of the challenges that have beset that beautiful continent. It's got amazing natural resources and such tremendous beauty, and yet, pretty tremendous poverty. There's some good economic growth happening there now, but again, the poverty levels are just incredible. And I have to be honest, like, when I was there in 2009, 2010, bringing our daughter home, I can honestly say that I came face to face with true poverty for the first time. I'm not trying to knock anybody's experience. We have hard times in the United States in different ways, but like you have not truly seen poverty until you've seen poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. You just haven't seen it. And so it was a bit of a life-changing moment for me. And so I started trying to explore, like, how do we get involved? How do we do something to change that? And a big part of it is just that, like, well, I mean, we're now a Korean, Ethiopian American family. Like, it's part of our family and our identity and our culture and who we are. So that got me connected with an organization that ran schools for orphans and vulnerable kids in different countries around the world. One of them was in Zambia and one of them was in Ethiopia. And so I was invited to join a trip and visit these schools and, like, check them out. So we flew into Zambia and visited there, and that was amazing. And then we flew back up to Ethiopia, second trip to Ethiopia, and I get to go, like, see this incredible school project, and it just was life-changing the moment I walked onto that campus. At that moment in time, it's probably 250 kids. They're feeding them twice a day, breakfast and lunch. And the idea is that will keep them in whatever family unit they're in. Like, let's stop these kids from getting relinquished to an orphanage by the time they get 12 and get really, really hungry and start eating eating their aunts or uncles or grandparents or whoever they're living with out of house and home. Like, let's give them the food support to stay in the family, unit that they're in, and then get a world-class education to try to break this cycle of poverty. That school project, I came home with what felt at the moment like an audacious goal. We were going to raise $35,000 to build another classroom building. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I had never raised like $300 before in my entire life for, like, nonprofit work. So I took the $35,000, I broke it into like 7 chunks. We found like 6 other Ethiopian adoptive families that we knew, asked them to get involved as well. And then we each went out there and tried to raise, $5,000 a piece. And we worked our tails off, and lo and behold, we got to go back a year later and help, paint the new building and open up a classroom building. So that school, I mean, we've gotten to be affiliated with that school for a long time now. We still give to it. It's 1,250 kids who, by the way, Ethiopia has 60-70% pass rate for their 8th grade exam that determines whether or not you're going to go on in school. Mm-hmm. And I believe we're on our 5th class, 100% pass rate. Wow. On the 8th grade exit exam. Like, these are amazing kids. It just goes to show you that, like, talent and skill is evenly distributed around the world. Opportunity isn't. And a big part of giving back is trying to even out that distribution of opportunity.
And it's on one of those trips to Ethiopia you met your son, Teddy.
You're right. It was on one of those trips back to Ethiopia. We met the kid that became the oldest Klein kid, and he's now just about to turn 18 years old. He came home at 11, almost 12. And so, amazing kid. And so that is our group. We're renaming them Eeny, Meeny, and Miny because there ain't going to be no Mo.
It's interesting because there's a lot of people that get to that point and they see they want to make a difference and they do it with money, which is great. But you went back and forth and you were doing it with your time too. What made you want to be impactful with time as well as money, when the money you were raising?
Well, I mean, look, I think when you think about giving, I think that there's time, talent, and treasure, right? And everyone has one of those to give. Everyone has one of those to give. I really, really believe that. I mean, the real candid answer to your question is, at the time that I was very focused on giving of my time, it was all that I had to give. And today we get to be a little bit more generous with our money, which I love as well. So maybe it shifted a little bit because my job is more intense, but I've got a little bit more that I can share from a treasure perspective. And I love that we get to do that. But I think that everybody has at least one of those things to give. I've never been accused of having much talent to give there, but my painting work on that building was not impressive. I'll just put it that way. Okay. But I look, everybody has, even somebody who's busy running a fintech company, might have a little bit more treasure than time to give, but has some time to give. And so I really believe that giving is an acquired skill. Like you have to learn it from somebody, or you have to, teach it to yourself and acquire it as a skill. And so, I mean, from my perspective, if all you ever do is write checks, you're missing out on the biggest part of giving. If you can get engaged and involved and give a little bit more of your time, maybe a little bit more of your talent along the way.
What's next? What inspires you from here? What's the next goal, the next mountain? What's next?
I mean, I'm super excited about a lot of the opportunities in front of us to do more in that way. One is we've been working on a project for a couple of years now to basically do a technology startup in Ethiopia, which is kind of a vocational training school hiding in plain sight as a for-profit business. It's struggling a lot right now because it got hit by the double whammy of COVID and civil war in Ethiopia, which has, made it really, really struggle. I know we're making a great impact on the student interns who are there. They're working their tails off. In terms of turning it into a profitable startup, like that has just gotten hit by the double whammy of COVID and the civil war. So we're gonna have to think about how do we reshape that project to make it sustainable, because we want to make a sustainable impact in all of these ways that we do things. I'm really grateful that we've had the opportunity to use our annual customer conference, the Fearless Investing Summit, to raise money for projects like that, and other kinds of nonprofit efforts. And we're going to continue to do that. I'm super excited about the growth of impact for Invest in Others, which is, a board that I have the great pleasure of sitting on, the great privilege of sitting on. Invest in Others is the nonprofit that rewards the impact that financial advisors make in their communities by distributing grants to the nonprofits that financial advisors support. And I just love that mission, and I love to watch the growth of impact that IIO is making, even the time that I've been there. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how do we continue to grow that impact in Ethiopia? How do we grow that impact via IIO? And I feel incredibly privileged to get to play a part in a few of these different things.
Well, Aaron, you've been such an inspiration for me personally for this industry, and thank you for taking some time to walk through this today. It's just been a great conversation. Thanks, my friend.
It's been great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We hope you are inspired to go out and make a difference in your community. For more information on Invest in Others, please visit investinothers.org. Thank you to Redtail Technologies for sponsoring these important conversations. To learn more about how Redtail can help you streamline your prospect and client communications, please visit redtailtechnology.com.